Good morning, and welcome to another episode of the Good Morning Minute podcast, where we start the day with purpose, passion, and a little bit of power. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and today's conversation is part of a special series in partnership with the Empower Her Steps virtual conference, a series that is here as a movement rooted in helping women rise, heal, and walk boldly into the life God has designed for them. Our mission is simple yet powerful, empowering life purpose, because we believe that when a woman finds clarity in her calling, everyone benefits: her family, her community, and the generations to come. So friends, grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and get ready to be uplifted as we dive into real stories, honest lessons, and bold steps towards purpose with our incredible guest today. And our guest today is Bill. Hello, Bill. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Thank you, Angelina. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Bill, I got to read a little bit about you through your bio, but I know our listeners are eager to know you. So, why don't you take some time to introduce yourself?
Okay. Let's see. I'm 66 years old. I grew up in Southern Illinois in a town called Chester, which is the home of Popeye, where Popeye started. Went off to college, been married twice, have six children, uh, had started multiple businesses, and now I've sold my last business and I've been focused on building my brand, which is Sage Life with Bill, because the last 30 years of my life have really been devoted to a spiritual walk. And
Mm,
there's been a lot of beautiful things, there's been a lot of very tough things. And I
yeah.
wanted to, my spirit told me that I need to help people on this walk and invite them in and help them to realize that we're all gods inside of ourselves. So we're all powered by God. So and when you can come to that understanding, then it's beautiful. So
Okay.
that's it.
Well, I would love to get to know you a little bit better through conversation, but before we do so, let me start out this interview with just something fun and easy. It's a little icebreaker. My question to you is, are you more of a sunrise or sunset person?
A sunrise or a sunset person. Um, a sunset person. In
Okay.
fact, I live on the 16th floor of an apartment building in downtown Birmingham. There are no other buildings to the west of us, and the sky many nights is gorgeous. Last night, I probably took 2 dozen pictures of the sky. It was so gorgeous.
Beautiful. It depends for me. Either I'm going to be a sunrise, depending on what the day is calling, but I like a good sunset. I tend to be more energized in the evenings and later night. That's when I feel like things are settled enough for me to really be in my creative mind space. So
Exactly.
I like that. But whatever it calls for, I'll jump into it for sure. So let's jump into our conversation, Bill. I'd like to talk a little bit about the spiritual burnout that you mentioned in your bio. But let me ask you this question: what was the
Sure.
defining moment of pain and challenge in your life, and how did it impact you?
Defining moment of pain.
Mhm.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Probably. Uh, I had a son who was 15.
Mhm.
It was Labor Day weekend. I was a hot air balloon pilot also, and we were fixing to go to a hot air balloon festival the following morning. And and he had a friend over, and they were staying in the apartment above our garage. We called the playroom. And when uh, 5 o'clock that next morning, there was a knock on my door, and it was a sheriff. And he said, "Are you Bill Powdler?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Are you Troxel Powdler's father?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Your son has been terribly hurt
Mm.
and in a car accident." And uh, and he wouldn't even tell me whether he was alive or not.
Wow.
And I said, no, my son's here. I saw him go to bed last night with his friend. And I looked over the sheriff's shoulder and I realized one of the cars were gone. And so that that started a series of pain, which I can tell you some more stories about when and he had ended up having drug issues, and
Wow.
I was sending him out west in picked him up from a drug rehab and sent him out west for one of those camps out in the middle of the wilderness camps. And I
Uh-huh.
was staying in the airport, and I had a friend of mine who was going to take him on the airplane, and he walked up to me, my son did, and he was angry when I picked him up, real angry.
Mm.
Uh, we had about an hour and a half car ride to the airport, and it was very hellish. But right before he got on the plane, he walked over. I was standing there waiting to see him and my friend get on the plane, and he walked over to me and he stood right in front of me and he spat on my face. And that was
Wow.
probably the culmination of that whole process that was a number of years long, but that was the culmination of some very serious pain for me.
Wow. And I'm just going to take a minute to unpack that a bit. I mean, like, to know that your son at 15 years of age is in a car accident and to have police knocking on your door to give that announcement. Like, as a parent, I've got three adult children, and that's a fear. That's definitely a fear of, they're growing into their independence when they're behind a wheel and getting
Yeah,
their driver's license and, all of those things. Because,
absolutely.
that responsibility definitely can have life impacting, consequences if they're not responsible and they're not careful. And then to add in addiction.
Yeah,
Yes. And then for a child to be so gone in the addiction or whatever it is that's troubling them, to have such anger, to spit on your face like
yeah,
that. I remember a moment when my daughter was, she was about 17 years old, and she was going through some tough things. And she was, as we tried to step in to intervene, uh, she was so angry. She was so angry that she would turn to me or turn to her dad with such rage, and just spout out the most angriest thing she could towards us. And I know how that hurts the parent heart, especially when you know that they're suffering and you can't help them because they're so
right.
resistant to it. Wow. Well, thank you, Bill, for taking the time to share your story and vulnerability, because I see the remembrance of the feelings there. So I definitely am there with you. Wow. Uh, so let's look at this moment in your life. What helped you grow and heal through this season?
Oof. Um, well, what was unusual about that experience was that was in the fall,
Hmm.
and in the spring, I woke up one morning and all my emotions were gone. Like they were gone.
Wow.
Like happiness, sadness. I mean, this incident hadn't happened. It was the beginning of summer. And like I love music, but music stirred nothing in me. I loved my kids,
Hmm. Hmm.
but I couldn't feel any love for them. I loved my wife, but I couldn't feel any love. I didn't feel
Hmm.
happy. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel anything for 3 months. And all my emotions came back at that moment when I was after the sheriff and we went to the emergency room and I was kneeling on the emergency room floor and I was crying and praying and all my emotions came back at that very instant. And
Hmm.
so that is what prepared me for what happened. And to me, that was just a God thing, just like God's in some way had to bring me down to this super neutral level to
Hmm.
handle the next set of things that I came up with that came into my life. So, No, I think that's the first part, maybe the first part of your question. I don't even remember what the last part is. So,
Yeah, just the growing season behind it. So here you are at a rock bottom moment, where you're just crying out. And I've done it too. That just that probably that ugly cry, right? Where you just like, oh, I got gasping for air. Um, and then all your emotions come flooding back to you in that moment. What was that even like? Like at that point, when did you start from that point, when did you start becoming aware that, you know what, there's some purpose behind these experiences that I've had?
um, probably the understanding came much later. And as I look back,
Mm-hmm.
you can place some understanding on it. But I had already started my spiritual journey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I don't remember where that was, but I had a defining moment when I started my spiritual journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that and everything that happened after that in my spiritual journey helped me just deal with life at a completely different level.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And what was this? So, like, what was the spiritual journey for you? Because I know that you mentioned having a burnout, spiritual burnout. What was the journey like? Because for some of us, faith and our spirituality, religion, whatever, what we're leaning on, that's our rock.
Mhm,
And that,
exactly.
that tends to be the last thing anybody is willing to just kind of give up on or let go of, during adversity. So help me understand that. What was that like for you? And like, how did you get back to from burnout? How'd you get back to a place of believing again?
Um, yeah, so
Hmm.
many stories.
Yeah.
Um, I guess one of my defining moments was I I grew up Catholic. I was running a
Hmm.
Catholic book club for a while, and my spirituality was deepening, and I'd had a couple little spiritual experiences, a couple major spiritual experiences. Um, I took my book club out of the Catholic Church because it got outside of, I think, what the Catholic Church was comfortable with. I didn't feel
Hmm.
like I could have my Catholic book club at the Catholic Church anymore because I felt like we were getting outside of the guidelines of what the Catholic Church teaches.
Hmm.
And so I moved my book club, but I started questioning the concept of original sin. In the Catholic Church, original sin is that we come into this world and our souls were tainted, you know,
Hmm.
and then we have this lifetime, whatever that's a day or 120 years,
Hmm.
to work out our salvation. Otherwise, we're going to, basically stand in front of this male God on a throne, and we're going to get judged as to whether we've kind of made the cut or not. And if we don't
Hmm.
make the cut, well, you could potentially go to hell, but maybe there's this purgatory thing in the middle. But if you make the cut, then you get to go to heaven. And
Hmm.
the more I worked with that, it just didn't make any sense to me. I
Hmm.
just kept going, why would a God put us on an earth for some specific period of time with a tainted soul and then make us earn our salvation? And I toyed with it for months, and
Hmm.
I went back to where original sin originally came from, and I could talk about all about that. And my whole family was Catholic, and my in-laws were Catholic, and we were very Catholic. But I
Hmm.
started questioning; it was making everybody uncomfortable. Uh, but I was sitting at a stoplight one day, and it was just like God dumped it all on me, and my whole belief about uh, the Catholic Church and pretty much a lot of life. It was like this building was around me and it just literally disintegrated to dust like I could feel it like falling down, and
Mm,
all this rubble hitting the ground, the dust coming up while I'm sitting in my car, and I'm going, "Oh my God!"
mm.
And that's I don't know, that was one of my defining moments. And once that kind of flipped, then the floodgates opened. Then I'm like, I got to figure this out.
Yeah, yeah. So just to kind of fast forward to the place of, you're at the hospital on your knees, just crying out, um, and being so numb for so long, and then just to have an outpouring of emotions. So what was that like for you? Like, was there any discovery in that? Was there any growth in that situation afterwards?
Yeah, there was huge growth. Um, one of the things we don't realize is we choose. I'm going to fast forward way to some of my belief systems, but I believe that we choose to come here, okay? That our
Mm-hmm.
souls choose to come here. And we come here for a number of reasons. And the primary reason, though, that Earth is like a school, okay? And a lot of people ascribe to the Garden of Eden story where Adam and Eve are in this perfect garden, and
Mm-hmm.
God's there. Uh, and in the Kabbalah, the way the Jewish Kabbalah explains it is that in the beginning we're just in the light of God. Okay, we're like ethereal spirits in the light of God, but we choose to come into these physical bodies
Mm-hmm.
to experience uh, divinity in a very real way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it caused me to take a look at why we're here, why we're in bodies, and what this is all about. And
Mm-hmm.
so here's some of the things I discovered was that emotions are a gift. Okay, they can be given and they can be taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that we've been given emotions uh, for a very powerful reason. Okay, and that is to help us discover like the scope of our divinity and how to master the energies that we have. Okay. I actually did a little video this morning, but I was talking about, when Christ went into, and back in that time, they would have called Jesus Yeshua. When
Mm-hmm.
Jeshua went into the temple and he flipped over all the tables, that was
Mm-hmm.
anger. And some people says, well, anger is wrong. No, anger is a very healthy emotion, and it's something that is used to fight things that are not right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I really don't like right and wrong anymore. I really use the word live or give life to. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of live is, if you spell live backwards, it's evil. Okay. So my really concept is there is no right and wrong. All our decisions should be based in either giving life or hopefully you're not making decisions based off not giving life or evil.
Mm-hmm.
But if
Mm-hmm.
we look at everything we do, every decision we make, if you make a decision to give life, and life might be disciplining your children, right? There's lots of ways to
Okay.
give life. It's not necessarily just, oh, maybe pain be, I'm going to love everybody. Uh, it's real. So we get emotions when we come into this world. We're in bodies because our bodies limit what we can sense. Okay. Like an
Mm-hmm.
eagle can see like 2 miles, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And a dog can smell better than we can. But our bodies limit what we can experience. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our bodies. We talked about what separates us from heaven and from the universe. It's our bodies and our senses. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we're in bodies to limit our view of the universe so we can focus on working on our divinity and learning how to love in perfection while we're here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question? Does that all make sense?
It does make sense. And I mean, I understand where you're coming from. And it may be more complicated to others that aren't quite there yet. So I do understand what you're saying. And I think I think it's a beautiful journey when you can discover, purpose through that. And definitely what I'm hearing is that's really the discovery of purpose. That there was so much pain behind a lot of the things that you've encountered and experienced. I also too grew up Catholic, so I understand. For me, when I stepped out of the religious practice of Catholicism, I carried a lot of shame and guilt
Yeah.
in that moment. Throughout my young adult life and into even now, I've stepped into different religions as far as like apostolic, Pentecostal, Baptist, non-denominational. And for me, my relationship with God is what's carried me through it. I've seen bits and pieces of him in everything that I stepped in, but it's not because of the religious practice for me. It's because I have a relationship. I know who God is for me.
Yes.
And I've seen the miracles that he's done in my many phases of life, which I'm sure you've experienced too. Uh, so yeah, I mean that's huge, huge. And then so how did that sense of awareness help you navigate your relationship with your son, or are you still, I mean, is there a relationship with your son at this point?
We're very close.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Uh, I don't know. Ask me a more specific question. I don't know what to say.
Sure. So what I discovered in my journey with my daughter,
Okay.
I had to let her go, like you had to send your son away
Uh-huh.
for healthy reasons, to go get better. I had to let my daughter go because I was fighting to keep her.
Yeah.
And in that moment, God spoke to my heart because I was so mad because I'm like, you're throwing everything away.
Yeah.
You don't see where you're headed. I was so angry with her that it was strumming up my own trauma from my own childhood.
Yeah.
And at that point, I knew I had to release her because if I didn't, it was going to get ugly really, really fast. So I remember letting her go and I remember shutting down emotionally. But God spoke to my heart and he said, you can't parent like you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong. You have
Right.
to parent now where she's at in life. You have to parent from a mindset of mentoring, guiding, and being a safety net because she's going to come back, but you've got to be there to pick her up.
Right.
And when that hit me, then everything from childhood trauma, losing both my parents, domestic violence, miscarriage, suicidal ideations, um, broken marriages, shame and guilt, parent shame and guilt, like all of that stuff started to strum up. And I realized I had to take care of myself. I had to go
Yes.
back and deal with what I haven't healed from
Right.
in order to be that safety net for my daughter. So that's where my question is kind of coming from you, because you're at this awareness of this spiritual awareness. How did that help guide you back to your son? Maybe that's the better question.
Uh, I mean, what you just said was just beautiful. Um, and heart-wrenching if you've been through all that.
I
Uh,
know. I tell God, I said, don't let me relate to everybody. I'm good. I'm good.
oh my gosh. Okay, let's see if I can. I got a bunch of things to say. Let's see if I can remember them all. Uh, First off, I have this kind of model in my head because I have six children. I've thought a lot about raising children, and
Mhm,
I have done a good job in a lot of ways and a poor job in a lot of ways, right? Um, but the model I have in my head is uh, in this world, we need to learn to be interdependent. Okay.
mhm,
But babies come in and they're completely dependent on us,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
so inside the family, you raise children and they're dependent on you. But as they get to the teenage years, they move to this independent stage, right?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
call that the natural explosion of the family. And it's very hard for the parents to stop the relationship with their children where they've viewed them as dependent and now they're moving into independence, right?
Mhm.
So the rules I kind of have for raising children and independence is I try to, at this point in time, I try to give them as much free running room as they can handle, and I
Mhm.
try to keep them from the critical mistakes, right? Car accidents and pregnancies and drugs and things like that. And
Mhm.
outside of that, I'll let my at this point in time, maybe I've let my kids just explore what they need to explore. And all my kids are, my youngest one is in college, and my
Mhm.
oldest one is 43 or 44, 42, 42 maybe. Anyway, um, but then they move from independence to interdependence, and
Mhm.
that is the healthy thing. And so, in commenting on what you said that you had to come back and kind of work on yourself,
Mhm.
okay? I'm a
Mhm.
big believer that everybody that comes into our lives for any length of time are part of our soul family, okay?
Mhm.
And our soul family, some of those people are really hard, and some people are the ones that just kind of love us unconditionally. But we need both because when we bump up against people that are hard for us, that is how that is one of the ways that we get stronger and better, right? And I'm a
Mhm.
big believer that all pain, uh, emotional pain, spiritual pain, mental pain, is all for us learning how to be better. Like if we go out and bump into a boulder, the boulder doesn't feel pain, but we feel pain. If I
Mhm.
bump into you and you're saying ugly things to me, that's not really, that's my pain that I'm experiencing because I don't know how to handle those ugly things that you're saying to me. Not that what you're doing is right, but, and we don't have right and wrong, right? But if I look at all the triggers, that's one of the things that I do in practical, all my spirituality is very practical. Uh, when something causes me pain, I stop and go, why is that causing me pain? And then I dig down into it. What are my traumas? What are my belief systems? What are my
Mhm.
this and that? So, and you talked about God said to you that around your daughter that you kind of have to heal yourself and be ready for her to come back.
Mhm.
Well, God wants us all to be healed, okay?
Mhm.
And one of the
Mhm.
ways we heal is by looking at our pain. But God also, uh, in the Bible, and I'm not I love the Bible, but I love lots of religions, okay? But since I did grow up Catholic and I am fairly familiar with the Bible, I use some Bible stories and terms. Um, but Yeshua said, you know, don't judge people, you
Mhm.
know, pull the splinter out of your eye or
Mhm.
the log in your eye before you pull the splinter out of somebody else, right? Um, and so God does two things per se that I think are very interesting. uh, he, she, because God is both, right? Because I'm male and female, just like you are male and female, except for our bodies are different, but we have male and female tendencies per se. Um, we all have male and female tendencies, mothering and warring, okay?
Mhm.
But God does a couple things, and one is judgment. God doesn't judge us. I don't believe he judges us. I believe that she allows us to come into this world to get whatever experiences we need to become more loving, okay, and more godlike. So that's the same attitude we ought to have with everybody else, which is very hard. If somebody's doing something wrong or something mean or something not life-giving, okay, or if they don't belong to our church, our culture, or our love for America, or whatever it is, we
Mhm.
judge them, okay? But God doesn't judge. And so that's the thing that we have to learn is that everybody's doing the best they can from their given perspective at any point in time. And when we can stand back and allow people to do what they do without judgment, and but not that we let harm come to us, okay? We we don't let people harm us. We don't put ourselves in abusive situations or any of those type of things. But when we can step back and not judge people, that is when we really learn how not to judge ourselves. And when we
Mhm.
can learn not to judge ourselves, then we can get real neutral and real happy and real joyous. So that's one piece. And then the other piece I'm going to say, which ties right into that. And if you want me to stop talking at any point in time, you just tell me, okay?
No, I'm listening. I'm listening.
I know. And I appreciate that. I don't want to be verbose though. Um, but the other thing is, just recently, just this last Lent, even though I don't practice Catholicism per se, I love the concept of Lent. 40 days. Yeshua went to the desert for 40 days for a reason. That is a magical number. So not always, but commonly the last number of years, I do a retreat for 40 days.
Mhm.
Um, just kind of start cutting my technology off and things like that. And but in that 40 days, I was actually in the cemetery meditating, and I was had had an issue, had pain with another person in my life, and I was thinking that, I was really angry and that I needed to forgive them. And then when you forgive somebody, you have that expectation that, they're going to apologize or something. But that's not the way God works. The word forgiveness, for, means out front. Like in a boat, the fore is the front of the boat, the aft is the back of the boat. So God, in advance, before we ever come here, forgives, okay, gives us
Mhm.
in advance complete uh, autonomy to do whatever we need to do to learn our lessons. Now, we know that some of those things aren't life giving, and I'm not saying that they don't have repercussions,
Mhm.
but because we have anything we do, positive or negative, is a vibration and vibrates throughout the whole universe, just like a pebble in a pool makes little waves.
Mhm.
So, when we can get to the point where we forgive others and don't place judgment on others, just like God does, then we also forgive ourselves and we also don't judge ourselves. And when you can get to that point in your spiritual walk, things get, you get to that point uh, where peace and joy surpass all understanding.
Mhm.
So, I'm
So,
done.
Bill, let me ask you, how did you apply everything that you've explained? Like, how did you apply that so that you and your son could reconcile?
Well, that whole experience happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's 40 now,
Mm-hmm.
and he was, between 15 and 25 at the time. Um, it's not just about my son. Because I've learned those principles deep in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I I try to and think I do for the most part, pass no judgment on anybody and forgive everybody. Uh, That's the only way I can stay peaceful, joyful
Mm-hmm.
inside my heart. And I think that if we can stay peaceful and joyful in our heart, that ripples out. And, I'm hoping that all the people that are bringing light to the world right now, like you, if
Mm-hmm.
we could stay, if we could stay light, if we could take that bushel basket off our candle, okay, then we can change. We can change the world. And it only takes 5 or 10% of us because the light's more powerful than the darkness.
Absolutely. And even in my rock bottom, when I asked the Lord in my way of prayer, I asked and I said, what's it all for? Right? What's all the pain? What's all the hurt? What is it all for? And his message to me was to be the light in someone else's darkness. So absolutely
Beautiful.
to be able to understand the experiences that we have in life, uh, but not let them keep us bound in emotion,
Exactly.
right? And so forgiving
Yes.
releases us from the emotional chains that
Yes.
keeps us in those moments, those experiences where we're reliving them, reliving them, reliving them. So when we are able to do that and then operate from a sense of also compassion and love, because love is one of the fruits of the spirit. So love, then we can, when we understand that, and we can love ourselves and love others, because those are the two commandments that Jesus
Yep.
took down, and everything that Moses came down the mountain with, Jesus summed up into,
Yep.
you know, um, and love being that foundation. So when we're able to do that, then the rest of the joy comes next. The rest of the fruits start falling into place and you
Exactly.
see life differently, which makes you more compassionate and kind to others so that you can reconcile with those that did hurt you. And you don't, and you can look at them from a sense of non-judgment where you're looking at beyond what they did to you, beyond their behaviors. You're looking at their spirit, you're looking at their souls, and you're understanding they too have emotional chains that are tied to an experience somewhere in their life that they have yet to be freed from. So beautiful, beautiful experience. And thank you so much for sharing everything that you have. Um, so let me, as we start kind of rounding out our conversation, Bill, let me ask you if there was somebody out there that was struggling today, trying to figure it out. Maybe they're on the hospital floor crying out and they're trying to figure it out. What kind of advice would you give that person?
Couple things. I mean, the first thing is you've got to have some quiet time.
Mm,
5, 10, 15 minutes. I like the morning. And you've got to be quiet because it's only in the quiet where you can hear the voice of God.
mhm,
And so I would tell everybody you've got to section off at least 15 minutes a day where you're sitting there, where you're
mhm.
not looking at your phone, where
Yeah.
nobody's knocking at the door. That's the first thing. Uh, and then the second thing is, we come in as babies, we're perfect, we're pure. You see a baby, you go, oh, because they're awesome. That's the
Mhm,
clean, pure spirit of God. And then we lacquer all these things on them, all these false beliefs, all this trauma, all this victimization. And so once you start being quiet, and then you see whenever you have pain, you can take and look at that pain and go, what false belief do I have? What is out there that I need to let go? And while you're doing that with 15 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes worth of
mhm,
quiet time every day, and the spirit will help you just chisel these false beliefs off of you. You don't even have to, oh, the kitty cat. Um,
mhm,
you don't even really have to do anything. You just have to look at life with a level of awareness. But
mhm.
you've got to get some quiet time. That's what I tell people. And then look at your life with awareness. Start looking at what's true, what's not true. And as all that stuff chisels off, you come back to your original self, which
Mm-hmm.
your original self is God, because God animates us. The word soul in Latin actually means to animate.
Mm-hmm.
So God animates our souls. God animates, when we die, you look at a corpse, that spirit's gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that spirit of God is inside of us. If the spirit of God is inside of us and it's peaceful, joyful, wise, loving, strong, powerful, bold, all those things, all we have to do is slowly tear down all this negative stuff that we've picked up in this world, and then we can live with compassion and love and
Mm-hmm.
be happy.
And it's true, to take time and, peace be still is what I hear. And then also, like, I have the vision of Jesus when he would go into the garden
Yes.
and walk with God and talk with God. Like that's what that time should be, as you slow down and you are communing with the Lord and being in his presence, making yourself vulnerable to be in his presence. I mean, as Jesus did too. That's so true. And you're not the first person to come on the show going, yeah, you need to take time for yourself. You need to do a pause and allow yourself to recharge in that moment, gain clarity. But in those moments too is when we're most, if we allow ourselves to be open, we can truly hear the word of God, and it'll guide us and definitely give us direction in those moments. Um, so, Bill, let me ask you this question of legacy and impact that I ask all my guests. And my question to you today is: if today were to be your last day, what would you want to be remembered for?
Uh, Bringing practical spirituality to everybody's lives. I just think
Mhm.
spirituality is just so practical. But, you know, religions and churches and all type of stuff try to seem like they make it difficult. But it's, you talked about Jesus' two rules. I mean, it's walking in the garden and being quiet and watching nature and loving yourself and loving those around us
Mhm.
and peeling off. In the Bible, it says, do not conform yourself to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you will know the perfect and pleasing will of God, because we come into this world and we get conformed to this world. And so we
Mhm.
have to take our minds and renew them. We have to make them new again, because the newness is coming back to our powerful spirit that's already inside of us. And then
Mhm.
once we do that, we can hear the voice of God. We can hear the angels. We can hear the spirits, and they will guide us. And that life, once you get to that point, life gets easier. Life gets more beautiful. Life gets more joyful.
Mhm.
So that's what I want to be remembered for, is helping people to wake up a little bit, to realize the divinity that sits inside of them, and that this is not some weird mystical, you got to worship the sun at 6 o'clock, and you got to do yoga, or you got to say prayers, or you got to kneel, or you got to do whatever. This is just like Jesus, like Yeshua. It's just daily life stuff, you
Mhm.
know? And once you get to that point, then you start loving on others, and it just ripples.
Mhm. Well, Bill, I do. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. If someone was interested in working with you or having you on their podcast, how can they get
Uh-huh.
connected with you?
Probably the best way is my website, which is sagelifewithbill.com. And from there, you can get my book. You can get on, I write a weekly story. You can get on my weekly story. I've got a Facebook page. I'm going to have an Instagram page pretty soon. I've got a YouTube page, and all of it's centered around Sage Life or Sage Life with Bill. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Bill, for sharing your story, your heart, and your light with us today. Conversations like this remind us that purpose is not about being perfect. It's about showing up and growing through the things that we go through. Trusting that every step matters. Here at the Good Morning Minute and through the Empower Her Steps movement, we believe every woman has a calling worth discovering and a voice worth using. So friend, wherever you are today, remember your purpose is powerful and you're not walking alone. Until next time, keep rising, keep trusting, and keep walking boldly into the life God has designed for you. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.